It is known that in English the word Pharisee does not have a positive meaning. And I will get back to that in a moment. This is, of course, at least one of the many results of the early Christian influence in European languages, that the word Pharisee began to mean a kind of hypocrite. But let's get first the meaning of the word Pharisee or Perushi in Hebrew. What exactly is this word and its meaning? Of course, that's how the Jewish sages, the rabbis, were called in the times of approximately the end of Second Temple and possibly a little bit later than that. And sometimes there are rabbis who are called today Perushim, or groups that are called Perushim. In fact, the Vilna Gaon, one of the greatest sages in the last 300 years, a lot of his students who went to live in Israel more than 200 years ago, and 200 years ago a little bit less, there were different waves of immigration, and many of them, people, Jews living in Israel, are actually descendants of these people today. For instance, the president of Israel, former president Rivlin, he was, this family, Rivlin family, was, they were the students of the Vilna Gaon. I actually used to own a book written by one of his ancestors. Very interesting book that has to do with teachings of their great master, the Vilna Gaon. So they were called Perushim. The word Perushim, Pharisees in English, in positive sense, Perushim is a word that's used for various groups today too, for various people today too. And it's definitely in Hebrew, it's not a negative term. So let's first understand what this term means in Hebrew. If you ask most rabbis and most Orthodox Jews, they'll probably tell you Perushim means from the word parush, meaning you distance yourself, you kind of stay away from anything that's forbidden. Meaning Perushim are people who are very, very careful not to break any kind of commandment. In the words of some of the masters, for instance Ramchal, right, you'd rather have 99 fences around some prohibition so that you don't break that one prohibition. So it's better to have 99 extra gedarim, extra ways to distance yourself from something that's forbidden, so that you don't break that one actual prohibition. So Perushim are people who are very, very careful about pedantically and with great exactness following the commandments of the Torah. As again, Ramchal, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto would give the moshel, the example, if a person, for instance, is weighting gold, he's not going to do it approximately. This is not stones or wood, where if an extra couple of grams here or there, it's not going to make it or break it. It doesn't even cost a penny. No, the gold, even one gram of gold costs a lot of money. So when it's weighted up to a milligram or whatever, with very great accuracy, because gold is expensive. So if you treat commandments of Torah as gold, then you'll be extremely careful in their observance. And that's what Perushim are. In a sense, when Hasidim emphasize the positive, Chesed has to do with love, with kindness, then Perushim emphasized the not breaking the negative, being extra careful not to do something wrong. However, there is a very interesting approach to this word Perushim from Rabbi Reuven Margolius. He was a sage who lived basically recently. At the end of his life, he was a librarian in Tel Aviv, and he is originally from Lvov, Lemberg. So he thinks that the word Perushim actually comes not from the word staying away from something, parush from something, but from the word perush, meaning explaining something. What are Perushim? Perushim are explanations. But in Hebrew, especially in biblical Hebrew, you find a lot of times that the object of something becomes the description of who is doing that action. For example, there is a verse, Ani tefillah, I am prayer. What does that mean? The psalmist says, I am prayer, meaning I pray all the time. I become associated with prayer to such an extent that I am the prayer itself. I pray all the time. I am the prayer. Ani tefillah. So he thinks it's the same way with Perushim. Perushim, meaning explanations of something, began to be used as the word for those who are constantly explaining the Torah. Those who explain the Torah were called explanations. Explainers are called explanations in Hebrew. Perushim. They constantly tell us how to keep the Torah correctly. So that's how the sages were called. Of course, Josephus, Joseph Flavius, used to be one of the people who translated this word and used it in Greek, and then it came into other languages. So the Pharisees, the Perushim, according to Reuven Margolius, it means, as Josephus himself explains, the people who are constantly explaining things. The sages who knew the Torah, and they would ask questions all the time, and they would explain everything, just like today. In that respect, there's not much changed, because the sages are, in fact, those who are being asked all the time. There's these Rabbinic responsa, for instance, books. The sages are the ones who are explaining everything. Whatever the case may be, in early Christianity, when Christianity used to be not a separate religion, but a sect within Judaism, there was, of course, a lot of enmity. And among other things, they used to make fun and used to, a lot of times, make it look like the Perushim, the Pharisees, are kind of people who are not really sincere, who are just all they do is they seem to be keeping the commandments accurately, but in practice they are hypocrites. So that's how the word began to have that meaning in English and in other languages. And the truth of the matter is, you'd be surprised, but in the Talmud, both Babylonian Talmud and Jerusalem Talmud, and in Avod Rabbinatan, it's in many rabbinical sources, they do talk about all kinds of Perushim that are in fact wrong Perushim, incorrect types of Perushim, including various kinds of hypocrites. If you don't believe me, look on Masechet Sotah, 22nd page. The Talmud discusses the wrong kinds of Perushim. Among them, hypocrites too, and all kinds of other. It's actually an ironic type of piece in the Talmud, I would say, a piece of humor. Not so common in the Talmud, but there are humorous pieces. And they make fun, for instance, say, parush, who closes his eyes in order not to see something that might be not appropriate, and therefore he bangs against the wall, and his head is all banged, with wounds or whatever. And other types of Perushim that are not really true Perushim. So the fact of the matter is, of course, there are all kinds of people. The nation is big, and there are people who are hypocrites. Can't escape that. There will be some people who are hypocrites. But the vast majority of Perushim were wonderful sages who lived a very holy life and were extremely good people by any kind of estimation. But there were different kinds of people, just like today, just like at any time. The problem that we're facing, and not just the Jews, but Jews face it notoriously very often in history, and that is that people who don't like us would quote and would show examples of a few and project it upon the many or upon the majority. So if they would find some quote-unquote Pharisees in the negative sense of the word, in the word in which it's used today in English and in other languages, the hypocrites, and they would say all Perushim are hypocrites. All sages are hypocrites. And that's completely untrue and totally, it's as far from the truth as is possible. Because these sages were really great people, and we could learn about them. The Talmud is a very honest book, by the way. It says both good things and bad things about people, including leaders and including everybody. So we could really have a great estimate about who these people were, what kind of lives they lived. And the vast majority of them were fantastic people. And if we could only imitate them and be like them, that would be great. But the Talmud admits that there are people out there who are Pharisees in the sense in which it's used today in European languages, the hypocrite kinds and all kinds of other wrong Perushim, unfortunately. But that's how life is. And on this, I'm going to end for today. If you like this video, please press like.